Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today at RHG Podcast. This is Isaiah Diesel, joined with my partner in crime, as always, Earl Gray. How are you doing tonight? It's tonight, right? Tonight, Mike?
All good, yeah. We're 2300, so we're coming to the end of the day, and with two kids,
Right.
It feels like 2 a.m., but hey, it's all good.
We got a very special guest today. Is it Jeff Schoep or Shoop?
Schoep.
Scoop. Oh, that's easy. Like two scoops Raisin Brands. That's easy.
Yep.
So, wow, we have so much to talk about today. And but before we do, try to kill a little bit of time here. We usually have a friendly fire round just to kind of get the conversation flowing. We usually talk about some philosophical or theological issues, but today we're going to talk about something very, very, very important. And so we always like to start off with something a little bit fun, a little interesting. So you ready for this friendly fire round?
Yep.
Okay, here we go. What is the best chick flick of all time?
The Notebook, maybe.
Oh God! Oh wow, we're off to a good start. I was gonna say that's really the only watchable chick flick out there is the Notebook, but okay, yeah.
So you go into a planet in our solar system. Which one would you be sent to?
Mars.
Mars. There you go. So you'd be a Martian.
Smart.
Okay. Oh, here we go. What is your favorite Skittles flavor?
Green.
Green. Gray.
Favorite pizza topping? It's an important one. This.
Boy, chicken.
Quite an important one.
Chicken. Okay, here we go. Here's the last one. You ready for this one? This is my favorite question to ask people. But if you were going to get killed by any fictional horror character, who would you want to go down at the hands of? It's the last one.
Probably Freddy Krueger.
That's everybody's choice. I love it. Everybody. We want if you could give a 2-minute, like a super nutshell, 2-minute breakdown of your story. Super, super, super nutshell. And then Adam is going to take the first crack at you. He's going to have the first 30 minutes, and it's late here, so Adam's going to get to bed. And then Adam just had a new baby, so he has a new child, so he has to get as much sleep as humanly possible, because the babies their number one goal is to deprive you of sleep. So we're going to let Adam get on his way. But 2 minutes, and then Adam, you're on the docket. Okay.
All right. Well, congratulations, Adam, on the new arrival there. And for my background, a short 2-minute excerpt. I was for 27 years involved with an organization called the National Socialist Movement in my past, and 25 of those years I was the national leader of that organization in the United States. For those that are not familiar with it, it is or was the largest Nazi party in America. Today, and since early 2019, what I do is I speak out against hate, racism, and I run a nonprofit organization called Beyond Barriers. And Beyond Barriers' mission is to help people get out of these type of these movements, and to help people change their lives and do the right thing.
Great. Yeah, I mean,
that was great, by the way. Thank you.
Yeah, fantastic.
We use an American football term here, like the 2-minute warning, because we want to like rush it in there. So now we're going to get a lot deeper.
Good to meet you, mate. I've not known about you long. I've known sort of a bit about Charlottesville and the horrors that took place there. I've actually seen the Vice movie on that too, which is quite difficult to watch. But you say you took the helm. Was it in 1994? You took the helm?
Yeah, it was around that time period. Yes.
Could you tell us a little bit about what happened in your life, sort of maybe a year or two leading up to 1994?
I come from a normal middle class, working class family, and I didn't have any bad upbringing or anything like that. So I mean, one of the things a lot of people misunderstand about getting involved in extremist organizations is there's this public narrative that, you know, a person has to have been abused or they've had to have had trauma and things like that, and that is the case in some cases, for sure. You know, I mean, we work with people that have had went through all kinds of things like that. For me, It was a historical fascination. My grandfather fought in the German army in World War II.
Wow.
My great uncles did as well. My mother and grandparents came over from Germany after the war and all that. So I had this fascination with that part of German history, unfortunately, and it sort of led me down that rabbit hole. And and I got involved in the movement. It was something that I was fascinated with from a very, very young age. And I didn't necessarily hate anybody. I didn't join it because I hated people. I joined it because I thought I was doing something good, something noble. I was going to help my people. I was going to save America. All these kind of grand, noble ideas, which of course it wasn't. We all know that it is a very hateful ideology. But people don't go into these groups saying to themselves, you don't wake up one day and say, you know what, I'm going to be the bad guy. Nobody does that. A lot of people that are involved in these movements, myself included, when I was involved, I thought I was doing something good.
Right.
So that's pretty pivotal in our approach for getting people out. But going into it and not realizing what a cult-like environment it is and how that takes over your life in so many different ways. Like it basically, you live, eat, breathe, and sleep this ideology, and you get radicalized once you get involved. So I guess that's it in a nutshell, how I got involved in it. And I joined, and I went up in the ranks, and eventually within a couple of years I was appointed to run the organization.
How old were you when you joined the organization?
I was around 18, 19 years old, around that time period.
Sure. So, I mean, obviously education prior to that, I mean, how did that all go well? Was it a choice between, pursuing the education, further education, or the career that you wanted to pursue, or was it just a case of, this seemed, you say it was a noble thing at the time, so you thought, did this just seem like a better move rather than sort of a normal career and that side of things?
Well, I didn't look at it as a career or anything like that at all. I had no intention of running the organization or anything like that. I just my dream, what I wanted to do as a young person, was I used to sing in a band, and I wanted to be in the music business. And at one time, I was even going to. I had a year scholarship where I could go and be a radio, learn to be a radio disc jockey. So something within music is what I wanted to do. I figured if I didn't make it as a singer, maybe I would go into radio or something like that. But that was the plan for me. And when I got involved in the movement, when I first joined, I had the long hair and all that back in the day, like Motley Crue and that look. I know most people look at me now and they go, "Oh, what?" Like they can't see that. But I put all of that aside, my dreams, the things that I wanted to do for this movement, for this ideology. Like I put everything into it. And you hear people talk about getting radicalized, and we deal with people like this all the time now too, where their lives don't mean anything. The cause means everything. And that's how I felt. Like I hear some of this stuff coming back at me now, when especially dealing with some of the people that are newer involved in these groups or getting radicalized, and how they feel like that. And it takes you back to that time. So it was entrapping in a lot of ways.
What about around this sort of time? What about your parents? Did they know? Was it, or they must have obviously, you're in the media. So, the first question is, did they know, or how quickly did they learn that you were involved in this, and how did that affect your relationship with them?
My parents were not happy about what I got involved in, and they tried like heck to get me out, and to convince me that it was a bad path to go on. Even my grandfather, about 10 years ago, he tried to have that talk with me and say, Jeff, this is gonna being involved in this is going to end you up in one of two places. They're going to lock you up in prison, or they're going to kill you. And that's where this type of movement leads for a lot of people. And that should have resonated with me, because I look back now throughout the history and the time that I was involved, I couldn't tell. If I had to put a number on it of how many people I knew lost their lives, that killed themselves, were killed, were shot, went to prison for 40 years or forever, it just one, a lot. It's really tragic, or killed other people. It's just absolutely tragic when you think of, think back on some of the things like that. Is absolutely tragic. So my parents tried real hard to get me out, but I wasn't ready to hear it. I wasn't listening to them, and I just kept going.
Jeff, just 1 second, just a quick clarification. The grandfather, is that the one who fought in the war?
Yes.
Wow, okay. That's interesting. You said you knew the people who killed other people. Did you say some of them had also committed suicide themselves in your movement?
Well, these are all different people, but yes, there was some that committed suicide that I knew. There was some that had killed other people. There was some that, I'm not saying like people that I was hanging out with every day or anything, but there's many people that I met over the years that unfortunately had done things like that.
Thank you, Adam.
Great. So what was your main ethos then, really? I mean, going forward, you were there for many years. So was your main ethos to educate and recruit, or was it to actually harm others physically, or what was the day-to-day routine? How did you operate?
So the organization that I was involved with was legal, above ground. It was an organization that wasn't out breaking the laws and things like that. So, and that was very important to me in my trajectory and in things like that. The first couple of years when I was in the organization, it was something that was taught to us by the former leader, that you don't break the laws, you have to stay within the laws and things like that. So I was very meticulous about that as the leader of the organization, because especially after, seeing people and hearing of stories of so many different people going to jail and getting in trouble. So it wasn't actually about harming anybody per se. And that was because it was illegal. It wasn't like this moral construct where, you did it.
Right.
Unfortunately, I'd love to say it was, but I'm being honest.
Right. Thank you.
It's unfortunately that, thank goodness we live in nations of laws, because if there wasn't laws, then some of this hatred and radicalization would lead to harming people.
Hey, Jeff, and I do want to point out one thing, because I did see the interview, I guess you're doing with the Muslim lady, and I guess I'll have to see the one that you did with Daryl Davis as well. But I did not hear from you, and maybe you had this in your heart, but I did not hear it coming out of your mouth that you had any kind of hatred. Like, you were talking about protecting other people, and I think that's very noble. I honestly do. I actually gave a sermon, and I was talking about the various rungs that people should be going up on an enlightenment ladder. And I said the very bottom would be a narcissist who only cares about themselves. And then you would have someone who cares about their immediate family. And then I'm like, and above that, you would have like a Nazi or KKK member who cares about everyone in their race. And I'm like, that's a step up from someone who just cares about themselves. If you want to see your people protected, like, I think that is commendable. That's admirable. Now, hatred or hurting people, that's not in any way acceptable, but you're moving up an enlightenment ladder. If you're looking out for the people, obviously the highest rung you could possibly be at is to love people who hate you, like Daryl Davis did. He, I think, is at the top. He's like the lion of the enlightenment ladder, the enlightenment food chain. But I did see that, and I'm going to get into a little bit more of this whenever I'm interviewing you. But yeah, it just seemed like you were. I did not see like ill intention behind, and maybe you were masking it. But could you speak a little bit on that?
It's a fantastic way of viewing the world and looking at it, and this is something I try to explain to people, that I was racist for quite some time when I was in the movement, and I was definitely an anti-Semite. That was a real struggle for me for a long time. But I feel like I blame that on the blame has to be left solely at my feet as far as, making personal decisions, but the ideology and being in those echo chambers, I feel like led to that, because it wasn't something I didn't go and join this movement because I hated people. And most of the people that are involved, now there is those people in these movements, and I feel like they fall into that sociopath or psychopath category quite often, where they just hate, blind hatred. But a lot of what being involved in these movements are, and I wouldn't have acknowledged it at the time, but I acknowledge it now because I processed all this stuff after getting out. It's fear. It's being afraid. It's fear that your people are going to be wiped out or victims of genocide and things like that because of a lot of the issues and things that happened in the past.
Personally, I don't feel that we should have been allowed to vote for this. I think mainly because this wasn't about race. This was it was a commercial decision. It was overall, the implications were commercial. Ultimately, although I personally voted to leave Europe, although I didn't believe that I should have had the vote. It felt right to me. I did what I felt was right. But a lot of people accused of leavers as being racist. If something feels a certain way to you, then you being accused of being racist for that decision is quite difficult to hear. But that comes down to lack of understanding, I guess. But I mean, you must have heard about Brexit and at the time, and what were your views on us leaving Europe?
We were really focused on more of what was going on in America, but we saw that as what was going on with Brexit as breaking down the idea of the European Union, which a lot of people in the movement believe that like a globalism and this takeover of countries. It's a lot of conspiracy theories fuel into that sort of thing. So we would have looked at that of leaving the European Union in a favorable manner back at that point, because it would give the nations back more sovereignty and not be under like a globalist agenda type of thing.
Which is precisely why it felt right to me to vote leave. And hey, the majority of the country wanted to leave. So what does that tell you? A lot of people say that the media kind of set the whole idea up that we would not be, we don't benefit as being part of an open Europe that allows other people from other races inside. But at the end of the day, our doctors, the majority of our doctors they're not British, so, we do benefit, and we're still allowed these doctors to come in, by the way. We still left Europe and we still allow people into our country that contribute. So and, personally, I never thought that our country would be able to continue without those doctors anyway, which made it an easier decision for me. But just moving on to racism in general, do you think that racism is natural? I mean, if we go back into sort of tribal sort of times, back then it would have been more about survival, I guess. Do you think racism at the moment? Do you think this is a natural thing or not? What's your views today?
I don't think racism is natural. I think it's a learned behavior. It's interesting you use the word tribalism, because it is, we've seen a lot of tribalism over the centuries and over the ethos of time, that people divide along tribal bases and even national basis and so on and so forth. But I don't think it's natural. I really don't. I mean, here we're in countries now where you have people from all different races and backgrounds, and we can all get along. And I think the narrative that some people push, that we shouldn't get along or that we should be divided and that we're this much different, I think it's dangerous, and I think it's not healthy for the national sovereignty of our countries. It's not healthy.
Sure, totally agree with that. Thanks for that. That's Yeah, that's pretty clear. I mean, I understand that the organization's ideas were to remove people from the country. Am I right in thinking that? That don't belong in your country? Is that right?
In the way that the groups, like the group I was part of back then, how they feel about that sort of thing.
Sure, yeah.
They wanted a all white country. So
Sure.
so the idea
Sure.
was to separate.
So did was the idea not considered that, if what's good for the goose is good for the gander, we need to displace anybody that's not white from our country, which obviously must mean whites would be displaced in countries like Africa and things like that. Was that considered? I mean, did the organization even think that should be part of the deal? An equal sort of response, or not? What's your take on that?
Well, I mean, the ideas and the belief system of the organization, looking back at it now, and there was times over the years too where people would say this isn't even realistic. Like what we were preaching wasn't realistic. It was like living in a fantasy land in a lot of ways. And I can joke about it now, but at the time it wasn't a joke. It was like, this is the way it's going to be. And the belief system was that the country was going to devolve into a civil war or a race war, whatever, either one. And it didn't matter which, but that when that time happened and the system collapsed, that these type of groups would rise up and be the saviors of America, or, et cetera, other countries. So when this was discussed, like if that day comes, or when that day comes, and people would have to be repatriated to different places, there was talk of like, well, if you repatriated a family from a black family or a Jewish family or whatever from here to somewhere else, that there would be fair trade and things of that nature. But it's not very realistic. I mean, how many people are going to want to just up and leave their homes and just leave anyways? It's just not even a realistic ideology, but that's how they thought. Yeah.
Sure. Moving on to sort of fighting hate with hate, and sort of, because I mean, I've got a limb, and I'm going to say that you think you should fight hate with love. How do we promote this sort of in all of countries, and how do we make this idea grow quicker than racism?
I do agree with that. We have to fight hate with love. Only love can defeat hate, and meeting hate with hate, I can tell you that it's the worst tactic. I could explain some lived experience stories about that, about how every time that I got physically attacked or there was physical confrontations between the right and the left, that solidified the camaraderie, that solidified the belief system. Very, very rarely would, and I always say this all the time, but no one ever left the movement from getting punched in the face, because you have this punch a Nazi thing that was going around for a long time. No one's ever left the movement because of that. In fact, usually that type of thing, or whether it's the police knocking on your door, asking questions, every time something like that happened to me, whether I was physically attacked, doxxed, or government intimidation, or however you want to call it, it was just police doing their job. But that's how it was viewed, was, oh, you're going to come into my house and try to intimidate me? Guess what? Now I'm going to do 10 times more. It just solidified that belief system and made me believe, and made people believe, that we are, under attack. And this is, why we're doing this. We have to fight back. So hate cannot defeat hate. It doesn't work. It becomes a vicious cycle. It's almost like recycling. I say the like extreme right and the extreme left, when they're clashing, these two type of organizations, they're symbiotic. They thrive off of each other, and it emboldens both sides, because the one side, hey, we're going to go fight the Nazis, that's emboldening them. If there's violence, and vice versa on the other side. Only love can defeat hate, and and that is a big part of my story. And meeting Daryl Davis and Deacon and how they helped change my life. That's their mission, and it's my mission as well.
Brilliant answer. Thanks for that, man. I'd like to move on to your deconversion now. But right at the start, what I'd like is day one. What happened? How long did it take? Can you just run us through that process?
Whoa.
Well, day one. Yeah, that's gonna be
day one. Where
do
is
you know?
Day one?
Do you know?
Hold it. I want to break this.
I
want to break this up for one quick second. And the other gentleman by the name of God, grumpy old dude. Well, the first call I had with him, the former Nazi who we just interviewed, and I said, hey, the first call, I said, hey, out of the interest of full disclosure, you need to know that I'm a skinhead. And you can just hear him, he's like, and I'm like, he's like, why? And I said, well, I'm going to tell you why. I said, when I was about the age of 24 years old, I started to lose my hair. And I said, when I moved to South Korea, I said, people started pointing it out to me because it's like a cultural thing. And I'm like, I had convinced myself in my mind that nobody noticed. And I said, so on the weekends, I would take a marker and I'd rub it on my head like that to fill in the blank spots. And I went out to a club one day and I got sweaty and I was talking to the girl and I rubbed my face and ink went everywhere. And he was just laughing because he was like, you could hear his body language like, oh, really? So yeah, I'm Mexican, but I lost all my hair at the age of 24. So
and all your respect, on that day.
Okay,
that's a great story too. That's a great one.
We sometimes try to use a little bit of comedy, or actually Adam and I will make fun of each other a little bit. I'll make fun of his weird accent or the fact that they like soccer.
It's hard to put a timestamp on that, but I met Daryl in like 2016, Daryl Davis, and meeting Daryl Davis at the time, I was still in the movement, and I met him for his film Accidental Courtesy. Right. Typically, I did background. Any filmmaker that would contact me, I would look into the background, see what it was about, try to get some background on it. For whatever reason, fate, time constraints, I don't remember exactly. I didn't do that for this particular film. I just went. I just said, okay, I'll come. And I went and met. So met with him. And I'm waiting outside. And here this big black guy gets out of a vehicle. And he comes over and he says, you must be Mr. Schoep. And I was like, who are you? And he says, I'm Daryl Davis. I'm the person that you were supposed to be, that you're meeting today. We were supposed to not meet outside. We were supposed to meet inside. That was the filmmaker wanted us to do that. I said, oh, well, I didn't know or something. So then we're talking and hit it off right away. I mean, Daryl's a phenomenal human being. And
yes, he is.
We had so much in common with the music and all that. And so I didn't even know who I was meeting. So it was quite interesting. I tell you what, so I'm there representing the organization that I was part of. And here I'm sitting across from Daryl, and we're having these discussions, and I'm talking about the movement and sharing ideology and different things like that. And we just hit it off. And off camera too,
wow.
Like, he was so perceptive. The girl that I had there with me was very jealous and different things like this. And I don't know how he picked up on it. Like, he really didn't say anything, but he wanted to ask me a question about another girl that I had been dating, and he knew it wasn't the same one. So he's like, can I talk to you in private, just you and me back here? And he's like, I got the feeling that I wanted to ask you about this girl. And he goes, and that's not the girl that's sitting over there, right? And I'm like, no, it's not. And he's like, I got the impression that maybe I shouldn't say it in front of her. I was like, man, you are super perceptive and really, I mean, he spared me a lot of drama is what he did. But it's just such a perceptive person, and we work together now at Beyond Barriers. So Daryl changed my life, and he is just one of the most incredible human beings I've ever.
I'm going to jump in here for a second, because he's literally the whole model for this podcast, which is getting people to sit down and have conversations I myself am a Christian, but I usually use some godless pagan, like Adam over here, and we have conversations and we just try to see things from different perspectives. We sometimes make fun of each other, and speaking of doxing, I got to say, probably the thing I'm most proud about this podcast, many things I'm proud about it, but the thing I'm most proud about is that actually 7 of the atheist members of the community have trusted me with their address to send them Korean gifts. And so, Adam, how were your Korean gifts? You like them?
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Hannah loved the face mask. Well, you
Yeah.
sent a few. She's
Yeah.
got a year's worth of face mask there, mate. Appreciate those.
All right, no
She's
problem.
going to need them.
Right. Growing up, so I'm Mexican. Okay, I want to come here for a second. I am Mexican, and growing up, I literally hated the fact that I was Mexican for multiple different reasons. But one of them was just I wanted to be white, and I wanted to. I couldn't really fit in with the white people, and then I couldn't fit in with the actual Mexican people because they spoke Spanish. They were actually from Mexico, and they literally saw me as a sellout, like because I couldn't speak Spanish. I was like more American. So it's like I'm just stuck in between two worlds. And I just released my second book called American Abroad, which is dealing with this many identity things that I experienced and then coming over to South Korea. But as a kid, we got called some derogatory words by some white kids at school. And there was one guy in particular who insisted every day that we would always play blacks and Mexicans against whites. So it's like, they didn't even care. It's like, you want to play soccer here? Like, you think you're going to beat a bunch of Mexicans at soccer? You think you're going to beat a bunch of black guys like at basketball? That was irrelevant to them. It's just they didn't want to be in our team. And so it didn't matter that we would kill them every day. I always felt so good doing that. But it made me very self-conscious about being Mexican. And I literally would cringe when I heard like the Spanish language being spoken. So when I used to watch the Maury Povich or the, what's your Sally Jesse Raphael, whatever was Oprah. And I used to see the Nazis on there. They did sometimes talk to them. I remember feeling such a hatred for them at that age. But even at that age, like 10 years old, I knew you could not punch this out of that person. That was not something that you were going to be able to physically intimidate them out of or win an argument with them. Because I'm like, these guys were so entrenched in their thinking. And I just knew this. I intrinsically knew it. So whenever I saw Daryl Davis, what he did, that is the first time I ever saw someone actually pull off what I knew was possible 20 years ago. And so the respect I have for that guy can't even put it on the charts. It's so far off the charts. It's just like in another galaxy. So yeah, thank you for this conversation. I mean, I'm really appreciating it.
Yeah, I'm gonna move it a bit closer to home actually and discuss things like London knife crime and things. I don't know if you know much about this. It is something that's picked up in London over the last sort of decade or so, and a lot of research has been done to try and prevent this from happening, and it's predominantly young people that are committing these crimes. And one of the studies that came from this, I understand from your perspective, Jeff, you had mum and dad at home. For you had a great upbringing and things like this, but they have noticed a correlation with these young people joining gangs and needing role models. And a lot of these young people, they find they don't have fathers at home, or if they do, they're never at home. They're working constantly. Or if they don't have a dad at home, their mum is working constantly. Do you think this is where the gang problems and the racism stems from? And not just that, I think it's the mainly the indoctrination, especially with sort of the Muslim side of things and the online sort of indoctrination. Would you agree that a lot of this might stem from role models or lack of them?
Well, there has been some studies on different things like that, and it does seem to correlate a lot of times. And I don't want to, and I definitely don't want to put everything in a box or
Mhm.
place labels on it, because I think that's careless or reckless to do.
Mhm.
That we have to, there's a lot of single mothers or single fathers both that raise
Mhm.
kids that turn out to be really well, but there is some societal factors. Let's just be honest, if there's not two parents in the home, the one parent has to do double duty, and
Right,
a lot
right.
of times they're working, and like you said, and they're just not there. So no matter how hard they're trying or what they're doing, there is some a greater error for failure there, or someone slipping through the cracks. And a lot of times, some of this is a societal thing, I think, as well. I don't know if race necessarily plays into that. I think anybody can be subject to it. So I don't know if it's a race-based issue, but I try not to divide things along racial lines at all anymore, to be honest. But I do think it has some effect. If we put ourselves into those situations, and I don't know your guys' upbringing, but I did have mother and father in the household, and if I would have been out trying to stick somebody with a knife, my dad would have took it to me.
Wow.
So there are a lot of people you left behind, and there's a lot of people that still share your old ideology. What's your message to them? You've got 3 minutes. You've got to convince these people. What is your message to those people?
There's a better life out there. There's opportunities out there. They're missing out on they're missing out on humanity. Being involved in these type of things, we've placed ourselves behind barriers. We've put ourselves in an echo chamber or a bubble. So to those people that are still in that echo chamber, still in that bubble, still behind those barriers, we're here for you. The door is open. Come and speak with us, and let us help you show you a better life.
Sure. Good message. Good message. What's your plan moving forward? This is a relatively new space for you compared to what you've been doing for many years. So, I mean, I don't want to make any presumptions. I don't know if you've really settled into life yet, or you've sorted things out in your mind mentally yet. But what are your plans? Sort of 5-10 years, and what's next for you?
With Beyond Barriers, I work in peace building now, and trying to help people get out of that life, and generally just we've got a really polarizing. We live in a really polarizing time here right now in America, where even between the political parties, the divides are so deep in this country. So working in peace building, helping people sort their lives out and change their lives, for me as an activist in that sense. What better thing for someone like myself to do than be able to use the skill set I had that I utilized before, and instead of utilizing it for something that was dividing the country, that was pitting people against one another based on the colors of their skin or their faith or things like that, to unite people, to do something meaningful, which is what I intended to do when I joined the movement, was do something meaningful. But I was on a wrong path, a wrong trajectory. Now I'm on the right path. So why not use that skill set? And the skill set I used to build that organization into the largest of its kind in America is now being used in peace building. So
Wow.
there's other skills that I have. I mean, I was a business owner. I know how to run business. There's a lot of things I could be doing that would be a lot easier than this work, and a lot less dangerous, and a lot less
more lucrative.
There's a lot of things I could be doing other than this, but it's my way of giving back and being able to do something meaningful.
Your ethos and your work ethic is the same, but it's going in the right direction, right? Or not to say that you knew prior that it was going in the wrong direction, because you thought it was, but it's just redirected.
Yeah, that's one way of putting it. Yes.
Well, certainly in Britain, there's been a lot of problems, certainly with ISIS and the like, with the beheadings. I'm sure you remember. there's a lot of anger in this country over that. It was in the media, and a lot of people only saw through the media, So they get this idea about Muslims, and there's a lot of Muslims in this country, and they had to live in a society that began fearing Muslims. So essentially, it turned their life in their home, even those that were born here, literally turned their lives upside down in their own communities. Do you know of similar sort of things that have happened from where you're from, your community?
Yes, especially after 9/11, Muslim people here in the United States were targeted, and there was a big scare, the public scare, where even other minority groups like the Sikhs
I know.
were singled out.
I know. They couldn't even distinguish the difference.
Right. They didn't even know the difference. So, a lot of times Sikhs were victimized, and hate crimes were happening to them as well as the Muslim people. So what that does when things like that happen, the media is partially, should be held responsible for some of that, for pushing that fear, but it comes, and that's just it right there. I don't want to I'm not going to lambast the media, but it's fear of the unknown. So here Sikhs are being victimized, Muslims are being targeted, and
Hindus.
All Muslims are terrorists. It's just not accurate. It's this fear of the unknown. They don't understand. People don't understand it, and they targeted those communities. And what that does, when a community is feeling oppressed or targeted or things like that, it actually increases the radicalization and the extremism. So now Muslims that are feeling pushed out or out of the conversation,
right,
now are looking into groups like ISIS or Al-Qaeda or things like that. So there's crossover. That's why I say these things are symbiotic. If you're pushing somebody from go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, please. That just I've never, I'm sorry to interrupt. I've just never considered what you just said right now, that you could actually be pushing them into that. But I'm so sorry to interrupt you. Please continue.
No, it works. The different types of extremism, there's a lot of crossover and there's a lot of similarities. And I think most people would be very surprised by that. And working with different types of extremism now and helping people to get out of it, I've learned so much in the last couple of years about the different types and how there's similarities and crossovers. But that also goes back even into my own story and the extreme far right, where people are feeling like a lot of people. Okay, I'm trying to break this down into simple terms. So a lot of people look at say, for example, like a Nazi group, and they'll say, those guys are trying to oppress other races. They're on the offensive. That's how a lot of people on the outside looking in view it. Like they're on the offensive. The reality of it is the people that are in these groups, they believe they are on the defensive, and they say it, they believe it. I believed it when I was there too, that I was under attack, the organization was under attack, my people were under attack. So we buckled down and thought we were going to fight back. And this is the same way a lot of people go into, the Islamist radicalization works the same way. And far left radicalization, we could go down the line. All of these different types of radicalization and extremism come from that place where that they feel like they're doing something noble and good, or that God wants them to do it if it's religious. And then also out of fear, they're joining these organizations and fighting for these ideologies because they fear they are under attack. Does that make sense?
Sure. So do you think there's an element of education here? Because, you say there's an anxiety or fear of the unknown. I mean, personally, I live in a community that probably contains more racist people than you'll find in places with a lot of Muslims in places like Birmingham or London, and that's purely I would probably say down to the media and the unknown. So would you agree that this is, I mean, from my perspective, growing up at school, I didn't meet many black people or Muslims at school. I then joined the Navy, traveled the world, went to university, and everybody at uni was from all over the world, right? So you get this idea, you meet these people in the same, they want to be there. That helps. School's different, isn't it? Where, a lot of people fight and these at uni, people want to be there. You talk amongst yourselves. So do you think this is could be predominantly sort of an education thing?
Absolutely. And I'm glad you brought that up, because preventative measures is really where it's at. I mean, we can do all we can do to try to help people that get out that are already radicalized.
Right.
But preventing it. So when you say education, I say it's lack of education that leads to a lot of this, because even in my own story or my own trajectory, I was so anti-Semitic, but I didn't really know hardly any Jewish people, hadn't
right
chance. And then since being out and being immersed with the Jewish community, working with the Simon Wiesenthal Center, and having chills, having these opportunities to celebrate with them and learn from them.
That's what does it, man.
Okay, there, Isaiah.
Yeah, you just put chills throughout my. Adam, you've seen me get the heebie-jeebies quite a bit in these. You see, Adam's seen me. I'm like a worm. I'm like wiggling around because literally chills just go up my. I made like a little highlight reel just of how many times people have put chills in my body. You can actually see it on our website, but you could just see me like. That's so touching. I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but yeah, please continue.
Okay. No, it's getting to know people though, and having those experiences. It's life changing. It's life altering, and I can think of just in the caseload and the people that we work with. Sometimes it's just one act. For me, it took time. Like you were asking about my de-radicalization, I did everything opposite of the way you should do it. In the process, the process is typically you want to disengage from the group. And then you de-radicalize. Mine was the opposite, because I was the leader of the group. I couldn't just walk away. I mean, I should have, but I didn't right away. So I was doing it backwards. I was de-radicalizing while I was still in the organization, which that's a whole nother complex story. But just meeting different people and having these opportunities where you're experiencing different things and different cultures and things that you maybe didn't know about. I can say I expected the worst. When I first left the movement, I expected the worst. I thought, and a few of friends that I was still talking to that were in the movement, they were saying things to me like out of concern, before I started speaking out, like when I left and I just wasn't talking to anybody, they were saying things like, Jeff, the Jews will hunt you down until the end of, till the end of the earth, and come after you. They will always see you as a Nazi. You will always be a Nazi to them. What are you going to do with your life? How are you going to, do this? You will never be forgiven for your past. You'll never, they'll never accept you. And for the most part, I mean, the Jewish community, especially the community that I was the most hateful to, has been some of the kindest.
I was watching this KKK rally, and the guy was like, he's like, I hate N-words, I hate Jews, I hate the Mexicans who use for the Mexican slangs. And he goes, I hate the Jews the most. He goes, I don't even know why I hate the Jews. He goes, I don't even need a reason to hate them. He goes, that's how much I hate them. He goes, and I was like, it was almost, honestly, I say it's almost funny that you could be that ignorant, but it's disturbing. But it was just the definition of irony. Is like he literally was admitting he didn't know why he hated them. Like there was no reason behind it. And that just goes to show you how much of this just literally is based in ignorance. So Adam, Kick Rocks, thank you, Adam. And they say in
yeah, cool. It's been a pleasure, Jeff. Good to meet you, mate. It's been an experience for me. No, congratulations, mate, on obviously finding the right path, and good luck to you, man. Good luck to you.
Thank you so much, Adam, and good luck with the little one and the family and everything, and thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
So I actually took a lot of notes, not only on this, but actually on some of the other interviews I saw with the Muslim lady. And this is why I was saying, when I was actually watching the interview with you and her, I literally saw the pain it was causing you. Maybe it was an internal conflict.
Mhm.
I'm going to do my best to not cry on this part, but I cannot guarantee. I can guarantee I'm going to try my best not to cry, because I don't want that on camera, but it might happen because some of this stuff I'm so passionate about. But I could literally see, looking into your eyes, you could see the reality of what she was telling you, how what you were saying, how that was making her feel, and you could tell it just didn't sit well with you, you know. And so, like, as human beings, because we have an empathy as a natural part of the evolutionary process, we don't want to be treated like that. So if you are personally complaining that you believe that Jews or Muslims or Mexicans, whatever, are invading in onto you, and you feel like you're being ostracized, then if you're repeating that behavior to someone else, then you're already by definition going against what you're the empathy that you believe in. But let me start here. Because I am Mexican, I'm married to a Korean. I've lived overseas, South Korea for 10 years. And having lived in Asia for a while, I'm going to say there's some of this with the Nazi or KKK or skinhead movement I can actually understand and empathize with. This is a totally different issue to saying how you respond to that, because how you respond is a totally different story. But I can tell you this, seeing the societies in which like China, Japan, and Korea have built, and how technologically they're advanced they are, I could tell you this, I can see very well into the future, like America can only stay on top for so long. Like we cannot compete with their level of their level of discipline, and the way in which they are able to just throw up, like, you know, their bullet lines and stuff. I just, if I'm being objective, I can say I understand if I were a Caucasian person in America and you're saying, hey, we're becoming a minority, maybe in 50 years or in 100 years we're gonna, you know, we're not going to be a majority. I can understand in principle what would go on through someone's mind. And so I don't think these are invalid thoughts to have. Again, how you choose to express that is a totally different thing. But I do want to start here, because you can sometimes have the right ideas, but maybe the way in which, or the person who you're blaming is not even the right person in the first place. So let's start here. Now, you're from Michigan, right?
I'm in Detroit. Yep.
Detroit.
Yep, Michigan. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So I'm not sure. Have you ever seen a movie called Roger and Me?
If I did, it was probably a long time ago.
This movie came out about 30. It was actually Michael Moore's first movie he made whenever he was actually like whenever he was coming from the soul, and it wasn't just about making money. But this whole story is about trying to talk to the CEO of GM to talk about the plants being closed in Flint, Michigan, the GM plants. And so when I saw you standing there and you're talking about all these plants being closed, it's like, how would you possibly in your mind think that that's an immigration problem? That's actually people who are rich, who are most likely Caucasian, sending jobs overseas so that they can make more money. So it's like, you have the right anger. I totally get the anger, but it's like, it's actually your own kind who are doing this, right?
Yep.
So what are your thoughts on that right at the top? Because if it was immigrants coming in and taking jobs, that factor would be alive and well, and you would have just a lot of international people working. But instead, it's just totally closed. So It's like the anger's right, but you're putting in the wrong direction. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, that's a lot of it. And there was people over the years that would say different things. Like they're like, and Dia Khan, the Muslim filmmaker that I became close friends with,
right,
she challenged me on those things as well.
Okay.
More often than not, on and off camera. But you know, like I be talking about, you know, the economic downturn here in Detroit and different things, and not just to her but to others as well. And they say, you know, all of that makes sense. Like what you're saying is relevant, but why the race thing? Like what does that have to do with anything? You know, and at the time it didn't get through. Dia was able to get through to me, but other people weren't before that, you know, because it just didn't click for whatever reason.
Mhm.
When things are going wrong in a society and in a country, and this is throughout history, people look for a scapegoat. They want to blame someone.
Right.
A lot of
Scapegoat.
times, even personal failings, like say you just got a crappy job that you hate and you can't stand it. Well, that's somebody else's fault. You know, it's not your own fault that you're not working harder or that you're not climbing the ladder. It's someone else's fault. It might be that immigrant that, you know, came over from Mexico. It might be that black guy that got the job instead of you, and you, or the Jews are behind it. You know,
Right.
they want to
Personal
scapegoat somebody, and then the personal
scapegoating.
accountability is gone. It's like they're not personally
Yeah.
accountable.
God, there's just so many things. It's hard. It's like I'm in a buffet line. It's like, where do I start in all this stuff that I took so many notes, but okay.
You had asked a good question. If you don't mind, I can talk a little bit more. I want to talk a little bit about that scene that you were talking about.
Please do.
With Deacon, where we're sitting across from each other, and the cameraman was on point, man, because he caught that it bothered me and zoomed in on my eyes, and that's why
that was
saw it in the film.
That was painful to watch, actually.
It was hard. It was so difficult because and that's, for me, that was one of the final straws. She really broke I would say, I'm trying to think of the right words to say. She really got through to me. It was so powerful that it was like that moment where we're in that room and she was telling me about how hate and racism made her feel as a person.
Oh God,
brother, I could feel her pain. Like,
dude, I'm telling you, I could see it
in the air. I could feel it. I could see it in her face, but I could feel it, and it was like bam, getting hit in the chest or kicked in the chest by a horse. It hit me so hard because she's an amazing human being, an amazing person, and I see her as like a sister now, you know, and here this wonderful human being is sitting across from me, and this incredible woman, and I could see her pain, I could feel it. That didn't sit right with me, and that's how you change people. Right. That's how you change people, showing those vulnerabilities and showing your humanity. That's it. Being able to rehumanize somebody, because what happens when you're involved in these type of extremist groups, you think you're going in with these noble ideals, but what you're doing when you start dehumanizing others, you lose your own humanity in the process.
Right.
So you've lost that ability. So our goal is to rehumanize, to help them get their humanity back, like Daryl and Dia do, and show them.
So you had mentioned that they asked you why you went to Detroit, and you're like, well, this is recruiting ground. And I believe in the same documentary, it was talking about how the guy was like, these are the things hard to talk about, but we got to talk about him. But the guy who was getting beaten up by his alcoholic stepfather, and how about I've had to come open and talk about my bullying past, and it's not something I really want to talk about, but because I live in South Korea and there's a lot of bullying that takes place, South Korea actually has the second highest suicide rate in the whole world. So when my daughter is half Korean and is already going to be subject of some kind of bullying, like, for me to not talk about what actually caused me to become a bully and I hate myself and I hate others, that was not even an option for me anymore. Like, because it's like at this point as a father, my daughter's life is literally in jeopardy by not addressing these issues. So I had to talk about how receiving bullying from myself, receiving physical abuse, receiving sexual abuse, how that contributed to my overall negative self-image, that oftentimes unfortunately, I say this so unfortunately, but it's just entirely true. Externalizing that and putting that hurt onto someone else just made me feel better. I no longer have, and it wasn't dealing with what was going on. It was just externalizing it so that I didn't have to deal with it. And later on, I've told you this, I'll tell you this again. I went back to America. I was an alcoholic. I was a womanizer, and I found Jesus Christ. And after 5 years divorce, I came back to South Korea. First night back, my wife got pregnant with my daughter. And my daughter was actually born right in the Olympics. And so going there and seeing that spirit of unity and people working together was just the most, my daughter couldn't have been born at a better time here in South Korea. But any chance you ever heard of a book called The Four Agreements? Don Miguel Ruiz. Maybe I'll send that book out to you. It's such a beautiful book. But he writes another book called The Mastery of Love. And in that book, it's like Toltec wisdom that he takes old Indian wisdom. And he says, look, if you had, let's say you had an oven that will make you any kind of food that you want, okay? And somebody comes in and offers you like some half-rotted food. He's like, you're not going to accept that because you can have whatever it is that you need. But if you're starving over and you might die within the next couple of days, and someone offers you like a half-eaten banana, you're going to take that half-eaten banana, you know? And so it's like if somebody has something, like let's say somebody has a family and a job and a career and et cetera, and they're a fulfilled person, there's no way you're going to go and recruit that person because you're offering them a half-eaten banana and when they have this oven at home. But you have someone who's broken, someone who's hurt, someone who's experienced abuse, someone who doesn't have a future, you know. One other quick thing, there's this story of this Nazi guy in America, and his son actually wound up killing him. His son was like 10 years old, and he was actually totally a fine person until he lost his job. Then he sat around, he got laid off, he didn't have anything to do, and it's just how to start looking for someone to blame. And then he got radicalized. And
I know this.
You know the story?
Was a very good friend of mine. That was our regional leader.
Oh, you knew that guy?
Yeah, he was a very close friend of mine. A very close friend.
Wow. Okay, so wow, that's
I knew the whole family. They were involved. It was the regional leader for the NSM. I know who you're talking about.
Yeah. But that's just a classic example that had he had his family and his house and everything together, you wouldn't have the time to do that. And another person who I really like his name is Jeffrey Greg Boyle, and he's actually a Catholic priest who goes and he takes drug dealers and gang members off the streets and like gives them jobs. He has a book called Tattoos on the Heart. And he says, nothing stops a bullet like a job. So whenever you have something constructive to do, whenever you have ownership, those people are not easily recruitable. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what you could come any kind of racist organization. They don't have anything to offer me because I have a family, I have life work that I, so you think, what are your thoughts on that about as far as the people who are broken? And I think that's why we need to treat those people with compassion. That's honestly, I have zero hatred towards a Nazi or a racist, or I mean, I've been into the homes of reformed terrorists in Palestine, working with the family of slain people. It's one of the organizations we support, but I know people can change. So, and I was a broken person myself. So what are your thoughts of that as far as what the people who are in the movements, what they actually need? Maybe you could speak on that one specifically.
No, that's a really great question, and your empathy and your way of viewing these things is so important. I wholeheartedly am just completely honored to be on your program, and we need to amplify this kind of message. I mean, it is so important. It's right in line with what the work we do as well, because it's showing people that that this is humanity, and that there's solutions, there's opportunities. So yes, I do think it's really important. And you're right. I mean, from my experience, especially leading the organization for so many years there, I wanted to know when I was there, why is everybody joining? What was the reason? And recruiters would ask people, well, what is the reason? And sometimes it would be they had a bad experience with a minority.
Right.
Sometimes it was, as you mentioned, troubled childhood or different things like that. For everybody, it was something different. But you're right. Like, people that are well off, that have good jobs, that have good lives and things like that, they're not interested in that stuff. The people that are mostly involved in these groups are people that have nothing, and they don't see opportunities for themselves. They feel like they've been left out of the conversation. So, and this brings to another really interesting point up, because a big topic of discussion for a lot of people too is the censorship of free speech and social media kicking all these people off. And the first order of the first thought when you think of that sort of thing is, oh, great. Well, all these racists are being kicked off of the internet, off of social media. That's a good thing, right? Well, yes and no. Yes, because we don't have to hear that stuff, but no, it's not good, because what it does is it drives them further into those barriers, into those echo chambers, and it radicalizes them further, because now they've got this persecution complex going, because, hey, I was silenced because I was affiliated with this, or I was affiliated with that. And if you take away someone's voice and you don't allow them to speak, and they feel that they are not allowed to speak, they're not allowed to get that out, they're not able to verbalize that, what happens? Then they're going to shout. And if they're still not being heard, then what happens? The next order of business could be grabbing a rifle.
Right.
Doing something horrible.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not saying I have all the answers. I'm just saying I do understand these steps to radicalization and how it works.
Yeah. Well, you got the insider's view. Speaking of which, I do have to say this. So organizations or movements like the Black Lives Matter and Antifa, again, I may agree with some of these people in principle, just as the same way as I may agree in principle with Christians, but I don't agree with the way that Christians behave. You know what I mean? Christians do stuff like doxing people or very verbally abusive and cursing and just doing stuff like that on people. And this podcast is actively fighting against that, because I use atheist co-hosts and we talk to even Christians or Jews, Muslim. In fact, we had a very good conversation with a Jew and a Muslim guy. So, but to me, that's the best thing that we could do, is having conversations. And I want to tell you how this got started, because speaking of online, there is this atheist group and they were, just talking all kinds of smack about Christians. And I actually went to one of their organizations because there was one guy wanted to debate there. And so as I was there, I was like, where is he? Okay, I found him. And so I went up, so we started up a conversation. He was there actually with his wife and daughter, or his son, his newborn, like not even a year. And so we're like, they meet at a pizza parlor. So like, well, I guess, should probably eat. Got a pizza, had a few pictures of beer. And we're like, you actually really like this guy. Like, he started telling me about his past. I mean, his dad got divorced with his wife, and then he went with his father, and then his father got remarried, and then they got divorced, and his father left him with the new family. And so he's there as an outsider, like the only biological kid. And I'm like, dude, the last thing at this point, after sharing this guy's story, the last thing in the world I want to do is debate this guy right now. And my favorite quote of all time, excluding the Bible, is that if we could read the secret history of our enemies, we would find enough pain and suffering that would disarm all of our hostility. I'm repeating this again, I'm sorry, not just for you, but for the listener. If we could read the secret history, the past of our enemies, we would find so much pain, so much suffering, it would disarm all of our hostility. And that's really something that I try to live my life by.
I love that quote, by the way.
It's good.
That is so true. It's so awesome.
Henry Wadsworth. I wish it was me. I wish I was quoting myself, but it's Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. He was like the poet of his day. But that is the most powerful quote I've come across, because it's so true. But so I do want to talk about something else here, because one thing that Charlottesville taught us is that, one, as I was watching some of these people, I was like, you could literally be walking past half of these people every day and you would never know any difference. Like, obviously you're walking around with swastikas and junk. Obviously you're going to know this guy is like a Nazi or whatever, they got tattoos and stuff, but like a lot of these people were like upper middle class people who held on to these beliefs. And for whatever reason, in the last 5 years or so, they felt completely comfortable to express themselves. So what effect do you think, and this is, like I said, like, I do not want to, as a Christian, I did not personally go after Donald Trump. That's not what I'm interested. I'm not interested in going after individual people. I'm interested in going after the ideology and the speaking, because, and I do want to get to Hitler real quick, and I do want to let you get on this, but Hitler did not start off by killing people. He started off first and foremost by just writing a book and talking about it. And then he like started raising the bar, like, okay, now we're going to talk, now we're going to put you into this area. We're not going to kill you, we're not going to hurt you, but now you got to go live over here. And now we're going to put you in this area, and then we're going to kill you. So it's like, there's steps that were going along the way. And for me, for seeing the level of hatred and disrespect that was going on in the speech, and a lot of people just being perfectly okay with a lot of Christians going along with it, I had to stop and say, this is not okay. As Christians, this is not okay. And this podcast was a result of that, by seeing that hatred. So I do want to start first and foremost with talking about hate speech. And if you can give me your ideas on that, and what should be like societal acceptance of that. Does it just fall into free speech, or what are your thoughts, Jeff?
Well, that's a tough one, because as an American, you know, I'm all for free speech. It's one of our rights here in America, but at the same time, because of my past and because of what I had been involved in, I do realize now how hate speech and how racism and all that affects different communities, and how it's unhealthy and not a good thing at all. So there's a little bit of a what's the term I'm looking for? But
cognitive dissonance. Cognitive
dissonance. Yes, that exactly. So there's a little bit of that going on there. So and I know a lot of countries are struggling with that, because at least here, you know, you can say what you want as often as you want, as long as it's not encouraging violence on someone. Like at the rallies, when I was involved in the movement, and we'd go to a rally, and if you had a meeting with the police or something beforehand, the police would say, you know, you can use whatever language you're using, but if you say, you know, like you say, well, immigrants, you know, back to where they came from. But if you say, hey, that immigrant, that guy over there with the red hat and the blue shirt or whatever, that guy, like if you single somebody out and you say something that about harming them, that's illegal. You're crossing the line there. So
you guys had to toe that line?
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's interesting why he chose the title Accidental Courtesy, because from what I understand, he was trying to understand why you guys had these views. And I believe, and I may be wrong on this, but even Daryl Davis himself would say that you have the right to have these views, because from what I understand, he actually lent some Nazis or KKK members his bus to go to one of the rallies. So you obviously believe in freedom of speech if that's what you're doing. There's a famous case where a Jewish lawyer actually defended the rights of neo-Nazis who were denied the right to protest. Yep. And he just believed in the principle so much that he's like, I may disagree with this 100%. In fact, I'm going to go protest whenever you come out here to do your demonstration. But there's some things that out of principle you have to stand for. And so for me, I don't know that as they said, cognitive dissonance is tricky for me, because I do believe that if you are doing certain kinds of bullying and trying to promote people to hurt themselves, that could really, really hurt people. So it's like, it could physically and mentally hurt people. So I believe like maybe you shouldn't go to prison for it, but you should be able to get sued for certain kinds of level of bullying or hate speech, or maybe like something on, it might just be like $50 or $100, something like that. But it's really got to be de-incentivized, because there are real world consequences to that, you know?
No, I agree with you on, you know, to an extent on it. It is a really tricky thing to to dissect, because looking back, like this stuff that I said in speeches publicly, the things that I promoted, I mean, I'm deeply, deeply ashamed of that. Like that is not, and it's not easy to talk about it. The one time Daryl Davis and we spoke at New York University, and it was a packed standing room only. I mean, there was not a seat free, and the whole back row was standing. And to get up there in front of that many people and to say I was wrong and that I'm ashamed of what I had done for all those years, coming out of a position where in the group I was in, I was always right. I mean, I wasn't right, but to the people in the group, I was right, because I was the commander of the organization. So I always knew what was right. To go from that into a place where you're standing in front of a whole room of people who I had said hateful things in my past, and it's a lot to process. Like that is, it's not easy to do that, to admit that you were wrong, and that takes a lot of it took a lot of strength that day, you know, and it's not an easy thing to do, but it's the right thing to do, because you know, it hurts. It does hurt people. It does hurt people when you do that.
Yeah. So a couple of things I want to say is that, one, I don't even think you should see whatever you're doing, and you could have your own motivations, your own intentions, but I just personally don't see it as you shouldn't try to get atonement for what you've done. Like it's in the past. Like the past doesn't exist and the future doesn't exist. The only thing that exists is what is in front of us right now. It's called the present because it's a gift. So that's what we have. And so doing the best that we can today. In fact, one of the quotes I wrote down here from that little documentary she made was, do the right thing that's in front of you. So we very frequently know the right thing to do, but we don't do it. So it's just starting first and foremost there. But I'm going to tell you the reason why I think your story is so powerful. It would be very easy to judge you. I mean, obviously, it would be very easy to judge me if I told you the past, the kind of infidelity I had with my wife, the kind of bullying, the kind of verbal abuse I had towards her. That would be very easy to judge. Maybe the harder thing to do was to understand how physical, verbal, sexual abuse can really destroy someone's self-image and how they can act out of it. That is the harder conversation to have, but it's not comfortable to have conversations, you know, especially now. I think my daughter, in about 15 years or so, she might see this and know that I treated her mother at one point like absolute garbage. And that's a hard thing. That's a hard reality. I would love to completely write off that chapter of my life and pretend it didn't exist. But to me, I'm thinking about the other person over there who's been abused and who doesn't know how to seek help. And because I sought professional help afterwards, and that was the most manly thing. Speaking of like a Mexican culture, there's a machismo that you don't cry, you don't show your feelings, and you don't apologize whenever you're wrong. That's another big one. So it's like you stay entrenched in your thinking, because if you were to admit that you're wrong, if you were to cry, if you were to seek help, that shows that there's something weak about you, and you have to project something strong. So I think what you're doing is a billion times more admirable and admirable to admit your mistakes and then to do about face. Like, I have 10 times more respect for someone than you who's just always been on the right path. To me, like, that's not really that commendable. I mean, it is commendable in a sense. It is commendable. It's great. But as far as difficulty, it's like you know what I mean, saying I'm going to go like hike Mount Everest without any tools or anything. If you were to go and do that, that would be like, wow. So like that would be beyond amazing. So in order to have the courage from that, it is absolutely admirable. And the respect I have for you is off of the charts. So I feel completely honored that you've joined me today. One of the things I saw was about the former military, and maybe this just has to do with the way that there are many times forgotten about when they come back here, because everyone wants to celebrate them. But when they come back, they sometimes, in fact, I just tell you because I have cousins, you know, served in the military, and we've had to do some outrageously horrific things in the military, and I've seen some horrible things. But did you ever see the movie Brothers?
I'm not sure.
Well, it's one of the guys comes back from Iraq, and he's just really, I think it's Jake Gyllenhaal. Jake Gyllenhaal comes back, and it's Toby Maguire comes back, and Jake Gyllenhaal is his brother. But he said just having a really hard time adjusting, like sounds and stuff kind of like triggered him and stuff. And so it seems like that seems to be a recruiting bed for neo-Nazi organizations, because you already have the military background. And can you speak a little bit on that, if you wouldn't mind?
And that is it is definitely a factor. We were in those days when I was involved in that, we were heavily recruiting out of the military. Back in the, I'd say late 90s, early 2000s, the former military or people that had the military experience was maybe 10%, 15%. By the time I left in early 2019, about half the organization had, and this was just in the organization I was in, about
2019. That's only 2 years. Wow. I didn't realize it was that recent. Wow.
Or March of 2019 is when I officially left.
So it's about, you said about half. And I'll tell you, that's what is the scariest thing in the world whenever you actually saw the Capitol riots, was that clearly a lot of these guys had military training. That was beyond evident.
Yeah, I could tell from, I mean, yeah, absolutely. And when they released the statistics on that, I was surprised it wasn't even higher, that as far as the military experience there in the Capitol riots. Well,
you saw them coming up, and they were marching in like in an order that they said was like very specific. They were like lined up in one line, and they had their hands on each other's backs, and they were keeping some kind of formation. And then they had things like zip ties and walkie-talkies. Like I wouldn't have been able to do something like that. I could tell you for sure I couldn't have done something like, and not even if I wanted to. It's like I just would not have the kind of training, tactical training to do that, you know, because you could see how they were coordinating to get in certain spots. It's like, this is sad to say, but it's like, you got to give the props, like the organizational, like, it's horrible what they did, but like these people clearly knew what they were doing. They clearly knew what they were doing, you know? So it's like, whenever I see, you know, just because I try to be fair, balanced in trying to assess things, and I'm gonna say, like, you got to give props for the organization and maybe even the spirit of what they're trying to do, because I don't to say that the neo-Nazis or the KKK have zero good interest or intent, it's not accurate. You know, people are doing what they believe is right in the exact moment that they're in. You know, they could be totally wrong, but they're trying to do the best that they can. Everybody's doing the best that they can at that exact moment. Of course, a lot of people don't have education. That's just a reality. We know on our best day, 1% of the other 99% that's out there, we have no idea about. So we're going off with a very small amount that we can see, which is why I like to use Ethos, because it helps me get like a more well-rounded view. Whereas if I'm a Christian, I'm just seeing the whole world with one eye, and I'm maybe messing up myself. And because I know as a Christian, I've made very big blunders and errors as a Christian and not approached people the right way. So I just think if we're going to really, like, these people need to be humanized and understand some of the motivations. If you are coming back from the military and you're having a hard time adjusting, and people aren't totally understanding about that, you know, the PTSD. My mom is a Vietnam veteran, so this makes so much more sense to me than your average person, because some of that verbal abuse, some of that physical abuse actually was at the hands of a mother who suffered from PTSD, who would occasionally black out and inflict all kinds of, and like not really even understand, you know. So whenever you have violence done upon you, I had these blackouts too, where I couldn't even control myself. It's like another person took over. But I think just, you know, validating the vets where they are when they're coming back and trying to understand, like, as a society, how hard that is for them, or even the grievances against the government, like the grievances against the government, like it doesn't matter if you're Black, white, Mexican, Latino, right wing, left wing, Democrat, conservative, socialist, Nazi, like the government is corrupt either way. We can all make the same kind of arguments against the government, but violence or attacking people, that's not just the way to do it. But last thing I will say on this, because I'm talking a lot, but it's like what I've said, it's the same thing with the Black Lives Matter movement. I may agree with you in principle, but you guys are clearly doing some things that are just making the situation worse. Antifa, you are making the situation worse. So having good intentions in and of itself is not a good thing. It's like you have to have good intentions, and you also have to have steps that are actually going to improve the situation rather than making it worse.
Balance is a big key. A lot of these people do have legitimate grievances, no matter what side they're on. They have grievances or things that they care about, that they're inspiring them, that they're getting out there. And, I'm sure you've heard the phrase, there's the truth, and then there's their truth, or his or her truth, right? So you have to understand when you're approaching different people that have different systems of belief, that they really believe that that's their truth.
Right,
so
right.
If you go in there and you say, you know what, you're an idiot, you're a racist, or you're a scumbag because you believe in this or that, or so on and so forth, and you label and you name call, and you go in there like that, you've lost that battle,
right,
trying to reach that person before you even started. And that's why like with our process and the process Daryl Davis and Diakon use, it's a lot of it is listening, and it's relational dialogue, it's reciprocal conversations, it's listening, but it's also being heard, and back and forth. And that's how we change lives. That's it right there.
The best way to engage is to actually listen. That's why God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. But a good quote for that is from one of my favorite movies, Cloud Atlas. And it says that truth is singular, but its versions are mistruths. So we're all going after the truth, but you may have like 30% of the truth and I may have 70% of the truth. But whenever I think I have 100% and you have 0%, again, that's not an equal footing, especially if both of us think that we have 100% of the truth. Like, you're not really able to make progress there. So as I was talking about with Antifa and Black Lives Matter, I believe a lot of their grievances are very accurate. But if I were on top of you and I was raining down on you with punches, say I was somehow able to get you down, and there was a gun right next to you, or let's just say I was choking you and there's a gun right next to you, or there's a knife, maybe the most pressing thing right there would that you would just be trying to buck and get me off of you, because you feel so threatened in that moment, where there might be some better options right next to you, but because you're being choked or you feel a pressure of being attacked, you can't even think logically about the situation fully. I mean, I talked about the Flint situation. You really got to watch that movie, because he goes after to talk. It's called Roger and Me because the name of the CEO of GM is called Roger, and Michael Moore goes to this whole effort to try to contact him. But this is a Caucasian dude who's, a billionaire, probably, in his 70s, and there's a lot of grievances, but a lot of this like, money does not know faces, one side or the other. Money is money, and so a lot of this can just come down to economic factors, and it's extremely simple. It's too much of a simple situation to say it's just white, it's just the color of your skin. There's lots of other factors that are in there, societal and economic, so many other factors, and nationalism that wind up going into these kind of things. So do you have any last thoughts?
The power of change is incredibly great, and if there's people that are sitting on the fence, or that are struggling, they want to change their lives, they want a better trajectory, they want to get away from, get out of those movements, reach out to us today, beyondbarriersusa.org, and we're here to help. We hear you, we understand, we've walked that path before, so come walk with us.
Wow. Well, we will be making a donation there, and we are going to turn this video into a fundraiser to, 'cause I just think that's just so important. I do want to close off with saying this, you know, you're talking about being a German. Growing up, actually, my mom was actually very racist towards German people. She told me that German people were just evil and that they were more evil than the rest of the world. And I was not old enough to understand that genocide and mistreatment of people was ran across the board, every nationality. And after getting a degree in history, I understand there is nothing special or unique what the Nazis did. I mean, lots of other people have committed genocide all over the world. And but it wasn't until I started to meet Germans. Actually, I do want to plug this one channel. It's called couchsurfing.com, because this gives you the opportunity to go and stay with people, and you can host people into your house. So I got to host about 300 people from all walks of life. And so whenever I'd go to other countries, this is how I was able to travel so much. I did get to go into Israel, and I did get to experience Shabbat in a Jewish family. I got to experience, I went and stayed in Palestine at a mosque for a week, and I got to go into Palestine with Reformed terrorists. And so I know that people can't, first of all, people can change. Second of all, that there's good people everywhere. I don't want to define white people by the races out there, or Muslims by the terrorists, or Black people by the gang members, or Mexicans by the drug cartels. There's good and bad on both sides. And it's only whenever you step out of your proverbial shoes, you can put yourself in other people's shoes and understand we're all on this planet and we're being flung into the universe together. No one asked to be born in their circumstances. No one asked to be born Asian or Black or trans or gay or straight. Nobody asked for any of this. This was all brought into us, and we're trying to do our best day to day, moment to moment. Unfortunately, half my life was spent just in total mistakes. But even in that time, like, I didn't think that I was a bad person. I was trying to do the best. I was coping with my problems with drinking in ways that I just didn't know how to do. Like, I have to forgive myself now for not knowing 10 years ago what I've learned now in my travels overseas and interacting with people. And so I just thank you for that. I think your story is so powerful. You said your website is beyondboundaries.org.
Beyondbarriersusa.org.
Beyond Barriers. Okay, so we'll put a link in there. And then you also had a personal website, right?
jeffschoep.com. Yep.
This is these are sometimes a little bit of uncomfortable conversations to have, but it's just totally necessary if we're going to move forward. So I really want to thank you for your time. And we are definitely have to schedule around too, because there's so many other things I want to get into. And just thank you. And with that being said, we want to thank you for joining us today at RHE Podcast. And be sure to visit our website at www.rhepodcast.com. We'll actually make this organization as one of we always give the guest an opportunity to choose one when they're available on our website, but to make a donation on your name. So we're going to include your organization. But yeah, you can check us out on that website, see the organizations we're supporting, and send us an email at rhepodcast@gmail.com. If you're not subscribed, please do so, because we're having conversations like this. We're trying to move along, and the more we can humanize each other, I think we're going to be better, and see that we're all just here with faults and flaws and prejudices, and let's just try to help each other out in this journey. So thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you back again. Goodbye.
Thank you.